next slide here. All right, so the webinar is going to be recorded and you can access it on the event page afterwards. All the data files and training materials will also be on the event page. So during the webinar, the format is Chantal is going to present on pivot tables, charts, and slicers. And after each presentation, the floor is open to questions. And in between, you can also type questions in the chat panel. All right, so really, if you want to learn more about pivot tables and Power Pivot, we have a course coming up, Microsoft Excel Power Pivot on August 17th. If your goal is to enter the world of business intelligence, data mining, and data analysis, then this course is for you. So Power Pivot for Excel enables you to transform enormous quantities of data quickly into meaningful information. And the second course we have coming up is Microsoft Excel Level 2, also on August 17th. So it's from August 17th to 18th. This course is intended to help all users get to speed on different features of Excel and to get more comfortable with the advanced features as well. So we'll cover how to create and use advanced formulas, analyze data, organize worksheet data with tables, visualize data with charts, insert graphics, and enhance workbooks. So you can visit courses.agiledatalabs.com for more information. All right, so again, we are going to cover pivot tables, pivot charts, and slicers today. So Chantal is going to work through the demo, and then the floor will be open for questions and answers. This is meant to be very interactive. Just one moment here. Welcome, Kay Hall. So we're just getting started now, doing the introductions here. All right, so Agile Data Labs, we're presenting this session today. We're a Microsoft partner registered in Toronto and Barbados. Our mission is to make world-class business intelligence training accessible to businesses around the world. We have a growing suite of data analytics courses such as Microsoft Power BI, Excel, Tableau, and Python. And we offer self-paced courses, live instructor-led, and in-class training for all individuals and companies. So all our courses are hands-on, where the fundamentals are taught, and participants are encouraged to work along with instructors. So I'm going to introduce our presenter today. Chantal Campbell is an actuarial analyst by profession with a bachelor's and a master's in actuarial science. She also has a diploma in actuarial techniques from the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. Chantal has worked in the pensions industry for the majority of her professional life, both in Jamaica and in the UK. Her role within the pensions industry has enabled her to assess pension scheme liabilities for corporate, government entities, churches, schools, and many other institutions, simply using MS Excel. As such, she has a strong background in quantitative analysis and statistical modeling with large data sets. She's passionate about problem solving and also in helping others who struggle in this area. So Chantal currently lives in Jamaica with her family. So at this point, I want to hand it over to Chantal, our expert, and she will get us started.
Thank you, Michelle. Sorry, thanks, Michelle. Welcome everyone to our webinar. So I'll be taking you through pivot tables, how to create pivot tables, how to insert slicers, and how to create pivot charts. But before I get into it, I just wanted to mention a few things about data to ensure that when we're working with the pivot tables, that we have the most accurate data. The data is as consistent as possible in terms of formatting, and it's not missing any details. It doesn't have any blank columns, any blank cells, any blank rows that would affect the results that we get from the pivot tables. So first of all, when we get a raw set of data or transactional data, the first thing you'd want to do with the data is to clean the data. So you need to check, for instance, that the date formats, if you have dates in the data, the date format is consistent, because that can affect how the pivot table picks up. It may not pick up that information if it's not formatted properly. And we also want to check that there are no missing items, there are no blank spaces, there are no numbers that should be a positive that are negative, or numbers that should be there that are blank, or numbers that look higher than expected or much lower than expected. This helps us to just validate the data and ensure that the results we get are as accurate as possible. Also, another thing is to check for duplicates, depending on the type of data that you have. The second thing I wanted to mention is when you get a set of data and you'd like to use the pivot tables on it, you need to ensure that you actually need to use pivot tables for it. So when you're defining what you need to find, when you're doing your problem definition, to be more specific, you want to ensure you know exactly what the problem is that you're trying to solve before you even start using pivot tables, because it could be the case that you don't have to use pivot tables at all. You could just use a simple formula, or you could just use a simple table with other details in there. So you wouldn't have to go to the level of pivot tables. So ensure you understand the problem clearly that you're trying to solve. And sometimes it's good to view it from the perspective of you going from a question to structure. So you want to ensure that the questions that you have about the data, you know exactly what those questions are before you move into how you're going to model the data or how you're going to manipulate the data. The third thing that's important to note is to ensure that you don't overwrite the data that you have. So you save the data as another file, as a revised version, or as a modified version, or as a derived version, but don't write over the data itself. That's important to note. Um, the fourth thing, sorry, when you get the data, ensure that you understand what the data has in there. So look at the source data and just have an idea of it, have a feel for it to see what it's telling you already. So at least look at the data headings, the column headings, to see what the data should be displaying. That's just important. So when you start doing the pivot tables, you know what you can and you can't use, or you know what you have, so you know what you can do with what you have. So I just wanted to clear that up before we get started. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to create a pivot table. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. The files I'll be using should be on the Agile Data Labs website. So if you haven't downloaded it, you can go there now to download it quickly. Okay. So this is the data that I'm working with. And it shows it's raw data of daily sales for different sales representatives. So we're going to create a pivot table using this data, and we're going to insert slicers and create pivot charts. We'll create a pivot chart. So to create a pivot table, we go to Insert, Pivot Table. You select the range that you like to use, including the column heading. And we're putting it in the existing worksheet, but we want it up some more in the sheet. So we'd like it about here in the sheet. And then that's it. So we have this is the area, pivot table field. This is the area where we basically create the table, and we decide what we'd like to put in the table. If we want to put names in the table, if we want to put sales figures, if we want to put the bonuses in the table. And the pivot table will basically summarize all these areas depending on what we select. So I'll just select a few items here so you can see what it will look like. So I want the rows to have the person's first name, and I'd like to see the sales. I'll put in the value section, which will come up on this side, and I'd like to see the bonuses for each sales representative. So as you can see, what the pivot table has done is taken the information for these 5 reps and summarized all the daily sales figures and all the bonus figures for each of these reps. So this is basically how we've created a pivot table, and we'll go into formatting the pivot table a bit later on. So the second thing that I'm going to do is show you how to insert a slicer into the data. Okay, so I'll open another Excel file. This is also on the website. Okay, so this is the same data that we had before, and the pivot table is already created for us. But what we're going to do now is insert a slicer. And to do that, we go to Analyze, Insert Slicer. And in this case, we want to insert a slicer that basically will filter out, based on the data item we select, it will filter out what we do not want included in there. And in this case, we want to filter out the information for Harrison and Thompson, because they would like to start a new sales department and they want to estimate what the bonuses and sales will look like. So we're going to use the chart to help us do that. So I'm going to filter it by last name, or slice it by last name. So I want Harrison and Thompson, and I don't want anyone else included. So I select this, which says multiple select, multi-select. So I can select more than one person or more than one item. So I need Harrison, I don't need Preston, and Thompson. And that's it. You can see it's automatically done for us already. So we can use this to estimate the sales goals, the sales and the bonuses for this special department that Harrison and Thompson will create to help them predict what this specialty product is that they're going to be using. So that's inserting a slicer. The final thing I want to do is to create a pivot chart. So this file is also on the website. This has a pivot table already. And in this case, you can see that the information displayed in the values area is in percentage form, which is another great feature of pivot tables. They can give you sums, averages, they can do counts, minimum, maximums, or even conditional functions they can display in this column. So in this case, we have the percentages displayed. So we'd like to create a pivot chart of this. So we go to Analyze, Pivot Charts, and I'm going for a pie chart in this case, a pie chart. And there it is. So for us, we can see that Williamson generated the largest, the highest number in sales. Well, it's probably not so clear from the pie chart because Williamson looks a bit close to Thompson. But from the figures, we can see that it's Williamson that has the highest figure. So if we want to filter out Williamson because we want to focus on the other sales representatives, we can go here, which is basically a filter, and we can take out Williamson's information. And just like that, we can see everybody else's. We can see everybody else's information. So that's it. That's how you create a pie chart, as simple as that. So I want to show also in terms of the formatting, how you can display this as a percentage. So how this happened is right click, go to value field settings, show values as, and as you can see, it's showing it as a percentage of the grand total, right? But if you wanted to change that and just show it as a sum without any calculation and just as right, just as figures, just as sales figures, and we can further format it so you can see it as a currency by going to number format, sorry, and then we go to number, sorry, currency. Right, so you can see what it will look like up here. And you only have to select one item in the in the table and format it, and the whole column will be formatted just like that. So that's it. That's how you get the format. That's how you create your pivot chart. That's how you do your slicers and do your filtering. And just like that, you have a pivot table that shows you quickly what the data looks like without having to apply any formula, just simply pivot tables. So that's it. I will go through two more examples.
Chantal, before you go through any more, does anyone have any questions? Because this is
Right.
a question and answer session, right? So if you guys have any questions about what Chantal just went through, if anything wasn't clear, if you'd like her to change the chart, for example, maybe you want to see her change it to a graph, you can just let us know. So, I mean, the floor is open. You can unmute yourself or chat or write a message if you want. So it's a real small group today. You guys have all this time to yourself. You have any questions, Corey or Crystal?
I have no questions
No
so
questions.
far.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, Nicole. Or so you can continue, Chantal.
Okay, so I'll just do two more examples. In this example, we're looking at sales again, but we're not looking at sales representatives, we're looking at different stores in this case. So I will be showing you how to create a bar chart from this data and how to create a pivot table before the bar chart. So what we can do is select the table first, then go to insert, pivot table. And you see, because I selected it already, or even if I just selected one cell in the table, the range would have automatically been selected in here. So we're putting it in the existing sheet. We can also put it in a new sheet if we want to, but sometimes it's good to look at the data and look at the table at the same time. And another thing worth mentioning is that you can actually get data from different sources. So you can actually have data from a database, a Microsoft database, that you try to analyze in a pivot table as well. So we're going to select this to determine where the pivot table should go again, and press OK. Okay, so now to actually create the pivot table, what I want to see is the store numbers. That will be the main data item, the store numbers, putting it in rows. And then the values that I want to see is whether or not these stores met their sales goals. So I want to put that in a column. It look blank now until I put the figures in. So I want to use the sales goals as values. So you can see which stores met their sales goals with the yes in the yes column. And then you see the amounts. And then you can see which stores didn't meet their sales goals. When the numbers just look like numbers, sometimes it can just look like gibberish and everything meld together. So I'll be changing the number format again. Right click, go to number format and put it as a currency. And there you go. So you see all the stores and it automatically gives you a grand total at the bottom. You see all the stores that met their sales goals and the amount of sales that they made. So that's the pivot table. Now I'll create a bar chart based on this pivot table. So I'll go to Analyze, Pivot Chart, and go to Column. It's a clustered column I'm doing, sorry. Right, a column. And that's it. You can see Right, these look a bit slim. But we can clearly see which stores met their goals by how much without having to look at this big set of data. We can just look at the chart and you can see who met it, who didn't meet it, based on the legends and the colors, and then by how much they met it and by how much they did not meet it. If we want to add data labels to these items, we can, I'll do it from the plus sign. You can do it from the plus sign and select data labels, but it looks a bit gibberish. Maybe we should put it in a different location. Chart type, chart area. No. Move chart. Okay, so we'll put the chart in a new sheet so you can see it's a bit better, even though the figures look small. But you get the idea. You can simply add a data label style. You can simply add a data label by selecting the plus sign and selecting data labels, or you can right click as well and format the data series. The other thing we can do is format the data series so we can have the columns looking a bit thicker, which is just more visually appealing. So we format the data series. And we can adjust the gap width between each of the columns. And that will make the column itself look a bit larger. So in this case, we can take it right down because they're so slim. And you can see it looks a bit bigger, which makes it easier to see. All right. The other thing that we want to do is filter the data. So we're going to insert a slicer again. Sorry, not sure what's wrong with my throat. We're going to insert a slicer, go to Analyze, Insert Slicer, and we want to filter out one store that should be closing, which is store 122. So we want the store numbers to be used as a slicer. Then we're going to multi-select and uncheck store 122. So you see the data in the table itself has changed. Let me do it again. The data in the table has changed. It's taken out 122. And the chart as well, right? You see that 122 was just removed. So any changes that you make in the pivot table are automatically reflected in the pivot chart. And this is a good way to filter out the data. And you can even filter out more than one store. So you can do multiple stores if you only want to see the information for a certain number of stores. And the chart will automatically update. And that's basically it. Did I miss anything, Michelle?
No, that's it. That you covered everything there. I like to see the interaction between the table and the chart.
Okay.
And well, a question from you: if you want to change the chart type, how easy is that?
You just right click and you see the option to change the chart type. Can do a pie chart again. And that's it. And you see how we can change the location easily as well. And you can get rid of certain things that you don't want. So if you don't want this filter here, you can hide it. Oh, what did I select? You can hide it. If you don't want these legends, you can remove them. You can change the colors by selecting this or the style.
How about adding data to the chart itself?
Adding data to the chart. So we'd have to go back to the pivot table. We'd have to go back to the pivot table and move this. well, the actual data, sorry, the source data. So say we want to insert, oops. So pivot table uses field to change the report. Oh, so it looks like I need to do another, okay, I'll copy this.
Or what I mean is the data label, for each segment, if you can actually see the label on the chart itself.
Oh. So put the data label, right, like we did for the columns. So, okay. So, oh, it's saying the data label is there. There it is. So you just press the plus sign and you just select data labels. And that's it. And you can determine where you want to put it. That's it.
It's really
So you want me to show you how to add the data to the raw data set?
Sure.
All right. So I just copied the table over. I think it's saying that I need to get rid of the pivot table. Yeah. All right. I'll just get rid of this pivot table and just work with the data itself. So if I'm adding a new data item, right click, insert. And for argument's sake, let me just copy this record over and just change the figure to probably 100,000 and change this to 50. Okay. So because I inserted it into the table, okay, insert pivot chart. I'll do this again from scratch. Okay. So because I inserted it into the table, the source data, right? The source data would already include it. So if I had put it, for instance, at the end of the table instead, at the bottom of the table, then I would have to change the data source and add an extra column to it. So say add 20, cell 29 to it, D29, go all the way down to that section. And then it would include whatever is at the bottom here if I added it additionally. But if I put it in, if you insert it in the table itself without adding it to the bottom, then it would automatically update. So that's how you can adjust the pivot table if you get new information or if you get a new month of sales that you want to add or a new month of something to add to the raw data. So that's it.